Since 2020, over 400,000 people have left California, a mass exodus larger than the entire population of Miami Beach. From the fog-draped hills of San Francisco to the freeways of Los Angeles and the rainy streets of Portland and Seattle, the West Coast is unraveling before our eyes. Skyrocketing housing costs, surging crime, fentanyl-lined sidewalks, and wildfires tearing through neighborhoods have transformed America's most coveted coastline into a corridor of collapse. These were the cities of innovation, opportunity, and beauty. But in 2025, they've become symbols of fear, frustration, and failure. Tonight, we uncover the 10 West Coast cities collapsing the fastest, and why families who once chased the dream here are now desperate to escape. Stay until the very end, because the last city on this list will change the way you see America's future forever. Portland's downtown office vacancy has surged to an astonishing 35% in early 2025, the highest of any city in the United States. Towering glass buildings that once symbolized progress now stand hollow, with entire blocks of windows left dark. For a city that once ranked among America's most livable, the emptiness is more than visual. It's symbolic of a deeper collapse. This decline has been shaped by contradictions. On one hand, gun violence and homicides have dropped nearly 60% since 2022, a reversal from the city's worst years of chaos. Yet, on the other hand, Portland's fentanyl epidemic continues to overwhelm its streets. Sidewalks are lined with tents, overdoses are at record highs, and residents say they no longer recognize the neighborhoods they once felt safe in. Safety on paper is not the same as safety people feel when they walk outside their doors. Affordability has collapsed right alongside. In 2015, the median home here was under $300,000. Today, it has soared to over $525,000, nearly doubling in a decade, even as wages stagnated. Families who once came to Portland for its balance of affordability and quality of life now find themselves priced out, pushed to surrounding suburbs or out of Oregon altogether. The contradictions extend to Portland's population trends. Oregon has now recorded 2 consecutive years of population loss, and Portland sits at the heart of that decline. Moving vans roll east to Idaho, south to Arizona, or across the border into Washington. What once was a magnet for young families and creatives has become a city people are quietly, and sometimes urgently, abandoning. Portland was supposed to be the model of a modern American city, progressive, sustainable, and livable. Instead, in 2025, it has become the cautionary tale. Downtown is hollowed out, housing is out of reach, and drug crises have filled the vacuum left behind. For decades, Portland's identity was built on balance, a place where culture, nature, and affordability could coexist. But when balance tips into chaos, recovery is never guaranteed. And now the question hangs heavy in the air. If Portland, once the picture of urban promise, can hollow out this quickly, how many other American cities are just one crisis away from the same fate? In Los Angeles, the numbers alone paint a grim picture. The city's homeless population has climbed to over 46,000 people within city limits, part of a staggering 75,000 across Los Angeles County in 2024. Entire blocks, once lined with businesses and theaters, now serve as tent cities, evidence of a humanitarian crisis unfolding in plain view. Affordability has turned desperation into the new normal. The median home price in Los Angeles has soared to nearly $900,000 in 2025, making homeownership impossible for most residents. Renters, who make up the majority of the city's population, face median rents over $2,900 a month. For middle-class families, the American dream in Los Angeles has become nothing more than a mirage. Even for those who can afford to stay, another crisis looms. Insurance companies are quietly retreating. In 2023, multiple major insurers stopped writing new homeowner policies in California, citing wildfire risk and spiraling costs. By 2025, thousands of homeowners in Los Angeles County have been dropped, forced into California's last resort state insurance plan, FAIR, which charges higher premiums for less coverage. Owning a home in Los Angeles now means gambling with fire, literally and financially. Crime, while fluctuating year to year, remains a persistent shadow. From car thefts to violent assaults, Angelenos live with a sense of unease. Even as officials highlight improvements in some categories, residents continue to cite safety as a top reason for leaving the city. Combined with choking traffic, rising utility costs, and shrinking opportunities, the picture of Los Angeles in 2025 is one of a city weighed down by its own contradictions. For decades, Los Angeles symbolized the golden promise of the West, a place where ambition met opportunity, where palm trees swayed over freeways, leading to dreams. But in 2025, the Golden City shines only for the few who can still afford its cost. For everyone else, Los Angeles has become something else entirely. Not a dream, not even a nightmare, but a warning. In Oakland, even progress feels fragile. City leaders reported a 29% decrease in violent crime through the first half of 2025. On paper, that sounds like a victory. But the reality is far darker. Oakland still ranks as the 6th most dangerous mid-sized city in America. For residents, the headlines don't erase the sound of car alarms at night or the fear of walking through their own neighborhoods. Safety remains a privilege, not a guarantee. Affordability piles onto the pressure. Average rent in Oakland now hovers around $2,300 a month, about 10% higher than the national average. For a city where household incomes lag behind its Bay Area neighbors, that figure is devastating. Families live paycheck to paycheck, squeeze into smaller apartments, or finally give up and load their belongings into moving vans. Every departure leaves another hole in a community that feels increasingly hollow. Businesses have been leaving too. Across Uptown and East Oakland, boarded storefronts and shuttered restaurants are becoming the new normal. Owners cite shoplifting, theft, and declining customers as reasons for closing their doors. Even chains that once thrived have pulled back, leaving behind rows of empty windows framed by iron gates. What remains is a downtown that feels less like a hub of opportunity and more like a cautionary tale. The city's finances reflect the same downward slope. As residents and businesses leave, so does the tax base that funds Oakland's future. In June 2025, the Bay Area Council Economic Institute warned that Oakland was sliding into a downward fiscal spiral. That means rising costs, shrinking revenue, and weakened public services reinforcing each other. It is the kind of cycle that can trap a city for decades, if not broken. Oakland's story has never been one of ease. Its culture, activism, and resilience are legendary. But resilience alone can't pay rent, keep shops open, or fix a failing budget. In 2025, Oakland is a city where collapse doesn't announce itself with a single disaster. Instead, it creeps in quietly, day by day, in the form of small closures, anxious neighbors, and services stretched too thin. Oakland is not collapsing in silence because no one is watching. It is collapsing in silence because those who remain are too exhausted to shout. Because Oakland's collapse isn't loud, it's quiet. And that makes it even more devastating. San Francisco has lost more than 60,000 residents since 2020, a population decline of nearly 7% in just 5 years. For a city built on the promise of opportunity, that is not just an exodus, it is an unraveling. Whole neighborhoods have seen friends, co-workers, and entire families vanish, leaving behind streets quieter than they once were, but not safer. The cost of living sits at the center of the storm. In 2025, the median home price in San Francisco remains above $1.2 million, one of the highest in the nation. Even modest homes in struggling neighborhoods routinely sell for prices that would buy mansions elsewhere in the country. Renting isn't much better. Average monthly rents hover near $3,000, forcing even well-paid professionals to live paycheck to paycheck. For working-class residents, the dream of staying in San Francisco has slipped into impossibility. At the same time, the city's homelessness crisis shows no sign of abating. San Francisco's most recent count recorded more than 8,300 people living without shelter. Tents line sidewalks just blocks away from luxury condos, creating a jarring divide between those who can afford everything and those who have nothing. Residents say entire neighborhoods feel held hostage, with open-air drug markets and encampments filling the spaces where shops and families used to thrive. The city's identity as a global tech hub has also fractured. After years of explosive growth, major layoffs from companies like Meta, Salesforce, and Twitter have shaken the local economy. Office towers in the financial district sit half empty, vacancy rates climbing as remote work pulls people away. Downtown, once a showcase of innovation, now bears the hollow look of a city unsure of what comes next. Businesses that remain complain of theft, vandalism, and dwindling foot traffic. Tourists wander into streets lined with shuttered stores. Locals avoid areas they once considered safe. For small business owners, survival has become a question not of profit, but of endurance. San Francisco was once the crown jewel of the West Coast, the city of the Golden Gate, of opportunity, of innovation. But in 2025, its shine is dulled by decline. People are leaving, costs are soaring, and the sense of civic trust is breaking. The story of San Francisco is no longer one of building the future. It is a city caught between the wealth of its past and the uncertainty of its present. And now, San Francisco stands less as a beacon of progress and more as a warning of how quickly even the brightest lights can burn out. Sacramento, California's capital, has long carried the weight of the state on its shoulders. But in 2025, even the city of governance is buckling under pressure. The numbers reveal a story that looks less like stability and more like strain. The city's median home price now sits above $540,000, according to Zillow, a staggering figure when compared with local incomes. Sacramento was once the affordable alternative to San Francisco and Los Angeles, but that advantage is rapidly disappearing. Families who moved here in search of relief now find themselves in the same trap of skyrocketing rents and shrinking opportunities. Crime has only added to the unease. Sacramento's violent and property crime rates remain well above the national average, with residents voicing concerns about car thefts, burglaries, and assaults. While not as high profile as Oakland or Los Angeles, Sacramento's crime problem quietly erodes trust in neighborhoods that once prided themselves on safety. The cracks show in the city's role as the state's capital, too. Sacramento depends heavily on government jobs, but the state's massive budget deficits, projected in the tens of billions for 2025, ripple directly into the local economy. Hiring freezes, program cuts, and shrinking services weaken Sacramento's stability. A capital city that cannot keep its own books balanced risks sending a darker message. If Sacramento itself is strained, what does that say about the future of California? Population growth, which surged during the pandemic as Bay Area residents fled south, has also slowed. Census estimates show migration leveling off, with some residents now leaving altogether, citing both affordability and crime. Moving vans are no longer just a Bay Area phenomenon, they're rolling out of Sacramento, too. Businesses complain of rising operating costs, high taxes, and difficulty attracting talent. The once vibrant downtown, already struggling with vacancies, shows the same patterns of decline that haunt bigger West Coast cities. Darkened office buildings, quiet streets after sunset, and storefronts that close long before their time. Sacramento was supposed to be California's anchor, less glamorous than San Francisco, less sprawling than Los Angeles, but steady, reliable, and affordable. In 2025, that promise has eroded. Sacramento may not make national headlines like San Francisco or Portland, but beneath the surface, the city is fighting the same losing battle: rising costs, fragile safety, budget strain, and residents quietly walking away. Because when even the capital city begins to crack, the whole state can feel the fracture. Eugene, Oregon, once marketed as the Silicon Shire for its quirky mix of university life, creativity, and tech-adjacent growth, now carries one of the darkest reputations in America. In 2019, it recorded 432 homeless people for every 100,000 residents, among the highest per capita homelessness rates in the entire nation. 6 years later, in 2025, the scars of that crisis remain visible on nearly every street. City parks, sidewalks, and underpasses are lined with tents, making the scale of the problem impossible to ignore. At the same time, the city's affordability advantage has vanished. In mid-2025, the median home price in Eugene reached $515,000, a 3% increase from the year before. Homes now sell in about 22 days, despite affordability slipping further out of reach. What was once considered Oregon's budget-friendly alternative is now another city where teachers, nurses, and young families are locked out of ownership. Renting offers little reprieve, with prices continuing to climb while incomes fail to keep up. The economic picture adds to the unease. Oregon as a whole lost 2,750 payroll jobs in July 2025, while unemployment rose to 5%, above the national average. Eugene, dependent on a mix of education, healthcare, and service industries, feels the strain most acutely. Layoffs ripple through households that were already teetering on the edge, while small businesses face higher costs and shrinking margins. Even the city's celebrated social programs are stretched thin. Cahoots, the mobile crisis response team once hailed as a model for the nation, now fields more calls than ever before. The program was designed to handle mental health and addiction crises outside the police system, but the sheer volume of need threatens to overwhelm its capacity. As fentanyl grips Oregon communities, the weight on Eugene's limited resources grows heavier by the day. The cultural energy that once made Eugene special is dimming. Local artists talk about being priced out of studios downtown. Students from the University of Oregon, who used to stay and plant roots, increasingly leave after graduation. Families that once moved here for affordability and livability are instead packing their belongings into trucks and heading north or east. Eugene's collapse isn't dramatic, like a crumbling skyline or a major industry disappearing overnight. It's quieter, more insidious, a steady erosion of affordability, stability, and community strength. For a city once seen as a sanctuary, the unraveling feels like a betrayal, because even the Emerald City can wither and whisper when it's slipping. Tacoma, Washington has long lived in Seattle's shadow, but in 2025, that shadow has grown darker. As Seattle's housing market spiraled beyond reach, thousands of families look south for relief. Tacoma was supposed to be the affordable alternative. Instead, it has become a mirror image of Seattle's problems, only without the same economic engine to sustain it. The numbers tell the story. In 2015, Tacoma's median home price was just over $200,000. Today, it's climbed past $520,000 in 2025, more than doubling in a decade. Wages in Tacoma have not kept pace, leaving working-class residents squeezed by costs that were once unthinkable here. Renters face the same crisis, with median rents well above $1,700 a month, forcing families into impossible choices between housing, debt, and survival. Crime has compounded the crisis. According to FBI data, Tacoma consistently ranks among the most dangerous cities in Washington, with violent crime rates more than double the national average. Residents report a constant backdrop of car thefts, burglaries, and assaults, crimes that not only erode safety but also scare away businesses. Small retailers and restaurants struggle with break-ins and theft, while larger companies are hesitant to expand into a city with a reputation for instability. The strain is visible downtown, where vacancies and empty storefronts are growing. Unlike Seattle, Tacoma lacks the corporate giants that can absorb economic shocks. Instead, the city relies heavily on logistics, shipping, and military employment. These industries keep the city afloat, but they don't insulate it from the broader pressures of affordability and crime. When household budgets collapse, so does the neighborhood economy. Tacoma's identity has always been shaped by its proximity to Seattle. Cheaper homes, easier commutes, a slower pace of life. But as the spillover has grown, Tacoma has inherited Seattle's problems without sharing in its wealth. Housing unaffordability, crime, and economic stagnation form a trifecta that threatens to hollow the city from within. The Pacific Northwest was once seen as a refuge, green landscapes, moderate costs, and a high quality of life. In 2025, Tacoma tells a different story. Its green hills and waterfront views mask a city straining under pressures it was never built to carry. Because Tacoma isn't just living in Seattle's shadow anymore, it's being swallowed by it. In 2025, San Diego's median home price has soared past $900,000, placing it among the least affordable housing markets in the entire United States. To buy that home, a family would need to earn nearly $220,000 a year, more than 3 times the city's median household income. For many residents, the American dream of homeownership has become a cruel mirage shimmering on the coast. Renting is no refuge. Over the past decade, San Diego rents have surged by more than 40%, with the average apartment now nearing $3,000 a month. For teachers, nurses, and service workers who keep the city running, even the cheapest apartments eat up more than half their paychecks. Families that once came here for sunshine and stability now find themselves forced into cramped housing, pushed inland, or pushed out of California entirely. Then comes the growing threat that money can't fix: climate risk. California's wildfire and flood dangers have grown so severe that major insurers like State Farm and Allstate stopped writing new homeowner policies in 2023. By 2025, Thousands of San Diego homeowners have been dropped from their coverage altogether, leaving them stranded in California's costly last resort FAIR plan. Owning a home here is no longer security. It's a gamble with both fire and water. Even San Diego's economy, long protected by the military, biotech, and tourism, cannot shield families from collapse. Military households already report that their housing allowances no longer keep pace with rents. Tourism may pack the beaches, but behind the scenes, service workers sleep in cars, commute hours from cheaper towns, or leave entirely for states where wages stretch further. Infrastructure tells its own story of strain. Freeways choke with endless traffic, neighborhoods brace for water restrictions during hotter summers, and city budgets bend under the pressure of trying to sustain a paradise that fewer people can actually afford. San Diego still looks like a dream on postcards, but for the families trying to live here in 2025, paradise has been priced and insured out of reach. For decades, San Diego's reputation as America's finest city seemed untouchable. But now, the beaches and sunshine conceal a harder reality. A city where the cost of living is unbearable, security is fragile, and the dream has slipped into desperation. And now the question lingers. If even paradise has become unlivable, where in America can ordinary families possibly go? Spokane, Washington, was once known as a quieter, more affordable alternative to Seattle. But in 2025, the numbers tell a much darker story. Spokane's violent crime rate is now among the highest in the state, nearly double the national average. A staggering reality for a city that once sold itself as safe and family-friendly. Residents speak of break-ins, car thefts, and assaults as routine parts of life. For many, fear has become the background noise of daily living. Affordability, once Spokane's greatest strength, has collapsed. In 2015, the median home here was barely over $175,000. By mid-2025, it has surged past $430,000, pricing out much of the working class. Wages in Spokane lag far behind Seattle's, yet the housing crisis hit just as hard. Renters, too, are caught in the same trap, with median rents now pushing above $1,600 a month. For families who once fled Seattle in search of a fresh start, Spokane has become another city where survival outweighs stability. Population trends show the shift. Spokane boomed during the pandemic, absorbing new residents priced out of the coast. But census estimates in 2023 and 2024 show growth slowing sharply, with early signs of outmigration. Families that came here to escape Seattle's chaos now face a bitter reality. Spokane is developing the same problems, only without the infrastructure or economic engine to handle them. The strain is visible downtown. Vacant shops and empty buildings break up blocks that once buzzed with life. Small businesses complain of theft and vandalism. Schools face overcrowding even as budgets tighten. Hospitals, already under pressure, report rising demand from addiction and crime-related injuries. A city that marketed itself as a safe refuge is finding itself overwhelmed. What makes Spokane's crisis particularly dangerous is its position. Unlike Seattle or Portland, Spokane lacks the economic diversity of global corporations, tech giants, or finance hubs. Its economy leans heavily on healthcare, education, and regional trade. These industries keep it afloat, but offer little insulation against collapsing affordability and rising crime. Without the wealth of its coastal counterparts, Spokane's unraveling cuts closer to the bone. Spokane once symbolized opportunity, a place where families could afford a home, raise children, and enjoy the natural beauty of Eastern Washington. But in 2025, that story is being rewritten. It is no longer the affordable haven it promised to be. Instead, it has become another warning that the forces tearing apart America's biggest cities are reaching deeper into the heartland. Because in Spokane, collapse doesn't roar like a coastal storm. It spreads quietly, like a shadow, until the whole city is covered. Seattle now has over 14,000 people living homeless in King County, the largest unsheltered population in the Pacific Northwest. That staggering number means entire neighborhoods live alongside tent encampments, open-air drug markets, and families forced to sleep beneath the same skyline once celebrated as a global tech capital. Affordability has collapsed alongside the humanitarian crisis. In 2015, Seattle's median home cost less than $500,000. In 2025, it has soared to nearly $850,000, pricing out even many tech workers. For renters, the picture is no better. Monthly rents consume more than 40% of the average household's income. leaving families squeezed by a cost of living that grows harsher every year. Seattle was once the place to build a future. Today, it is a city where survival alone requires sacrifice. The unraveling extends to the economy that made Seattle famous. After years of breakneck growth, layoffs by Amazon, Microsoft, and dozens of startups beginning in 2023 sent shockwaves through the city. By 2025, office vacancy rates in South Lake Union and downtown remain stubbornly high. Towers built as monuments to innovation now sit dark, reminders of an economy that no longer feels unstoppable. For the first time in decades, the Emerald City is questioning its own foundation. Crime and drug use deepen the spiral. Break-ins, thefts, and visible fentanyl use leave residents saying the city no longer feels safe. Billions have been spent on programs aimed at homelessness and public safety, but for the people walking through downtown, the results are hard to see. The city's reputation as a progressive success story is now overshadowed by growing mistrust in its leadership and systems. The collapse of Seattle does not exist in isolation. Its struggles spill outward into Tacoma, into Spokane, and across the Pacific Northwest. Housing costs rise, crime migrates, and the economic instability of Seattle ripples through the region. A city that once symbolized prosperity now exports its problems instead of its promise. For decades, Seattle represented the future. It was the city of coffee and code, of innovation and ambition. But in 2025, that future has cracked. The towers still stand, the skyline still gleams at sunset, but underneath, the city's foundation is eroding. Because Seattle isn't just a city in trouble, it is the collapse of a dream, and the world is watching it unravel in real time. From Portland's hollow towers to Los Angeles' streets of despair, from Oakland's unraveling neighborhoods to San Francisco's broken promise, from Sacramento's fiscal strain to Eugene's withering sanctuary, from Tacoma's shadowed future to San Diego's collapsing paradise, from Spokane's creeping instability to Seattle's shattered dream. The West Coast tells a story America cannot ignore. These cities were once symbols of innovation, opportunity, and beauty. They built the myth of the American frontier, where ambition met the ocean and progress seemed inevitable. But in 2025, the curtain has been pulled back. Behind the skylines, we see the truth. That collapse does not come all at once. It seeps in slowly, through affordability that erodes, through crime that lingers, through trust that disappears, until the foundation finally gives way. If these cities can crumble, no place in America is untouchable. This is Shifting America. Subscribe, stay with us, and see the collapse unfold before it reaches your own city.